Victoria Sterling had built her empire on certainty, data, systems, cameras that never blinked. But at 2:17 in the morning, staring at 7 minutes of blank footage, she felt something she hadn't allowed herself in years. Doubt. The server room logs showed an access breach during those missing minutes, right when her most guarded secret, a $200 million AI blueprint, left a digital fingerprint that shouldn't exist. The only person on floor 12 during that window was Daniel Crawford, the night janitor with calloused hands and a daughter dying of brain cancer. She watched him through the live feed now, methodically wiping glass doors with movements too steady, too practiced. And when he glanced directly at the camera for exactly 1 second before turning away, Victoria's breath caught. Because in that brief look, she didn't see a desperate father or a minimum wage worker. She saw calculation. She saw someone who knew he was being watched and didn't care. The security badge showed he'd been cleaning her building for 8 months, but as Victoria pulled his employee file, her fingers went cold. No photo in the old system, no background check deeper than surface level, and a social security number that, according to her initial search, didn't exist before this year. 7 minutes of darkness. One man who shouldn't be there. And the unsettling realization that the person she was hunting might have been hunting her all along. The fluorescent lights in Victoria's corner office hummed as she replayed the security footage for the 9th time. Sterling Tech occupied 42 floors of Manhattan real estate, but none of that mattered when 7 missing minutes could destroy everything she'd built. Her IT director had called it a technical glitch, but Victoria hadn't survived this long by believing in coincidences. She zoomed in on the timestamp showing Daniel Crawford's badge accessing the server room during the exact window when someone had copied the Helix project files. She ran his social security number through a comprehensive database. The results came back in stark red letters. No records found prior to 8 months ago. Daniel Crawford didn't exist before he'd started cleaning her building. Someone had created him, placed him exactly where he needed to be. Victoria stood abruptly and made a decision that would either expose a threat or destroy an innocent man's life. She left her office, taking the stairs down to floor 12. Daniel was wiping down a conference room's glass wall when she approached. "Working late, Mr. Crawford." Her voice cut through the silence with surgical precision. He didn't jump, just stopped, held his position for 2 seconds, then turned with an expression of polite surprise that looked rehearsed. Up close, Victoria could see the calluses on his fingertips, not his palms. The kind from typing, not mopping. His uniform fit well, but the way he stood spoke of someone used to carrying more authority than a minimum wage position offered. "Ms. Sterling, didn't expect to see you up here at this hour. You accessed the server room tonight, room 1214. Victoria crossed her arms. "I cleaned it, yes ma'am. Same as every night." His tone remained carefully neutral. "Building services provided the code when I started this floor rotation." Victoria studied him, looking for the crack in the facade. "Tell me about your daughter." This time, the reaction was immediate. Daniel's jaw tightened, his hands clenching briefly. "Sophie's 7. Brain cancer. Glioblastoma. $340,000 in medical bills. Maybe 6 months left if the next treatment doesn't take." He paused, voice harder. "That answer your question, or do you need her oncologist's contact information?" Victoria felt something twist in her chest. She understood desperation. She'd maxed out credit cards building this company, knew what it meant to sacrifice everything. But understanding didn't mean trusting. "The server room logs show your badge accessed the system during 7 minutes when our cameras went offline. During those same minutes, someone copied highly classified files. Either you're incredibly unlucky with timing, or you're not who you claim to be." Daniel stared at her, then laughed, a genuine sound of dark amusement. "You think if I was stealing from you, I'd be dumb enough to use my own badge? Miss Sterling, you didn't build this company by being stupid. Don't insult me by assuming I am." He leaned closer, voice dropping. "But since we're being honest, when was the last time you checked your CFO's offshore accounts? Or looked into where Richard Sutton actually goes on his monthly trips to Geneva?" Victoria's blood went cold. Richard Sutton had been with Sterling Tech for 15 years, since the early days. He was family, or as close to family as she allowed. "You're deflecting. Am I? Look, I need this job. Sophie needs her treatments. But if someone wanted to frame a desperate single dad for corporate espionage, I'd be the perfect patsy, wouldn't I?" Daniel's expression shifted, becoming serious. Medical bills, access to restricted areas, no resources to fight back. The logic was sound, which made Victoria's head spin. Either he was exactly what he appeared, a father set up to take the fall, or the most sophisticated operator she'd ever encountered. "Go home, Mr. Crawford. We'll continue this tomorrow. My office. 9 a.m. Daniel nodded slowly, gathered his supplies, and left. Victoria watched him go, then pulled out her phone and called Carter Haynes, the private investigator she'd used during her divorce. He answered on the third ring, voice thick with sleep. "This better be life or death, Sterling. I need a deep background check. Priority level. Everything you can find in 6 hours." Victoria's voice was clipped. "Subject's name is Daniel Crawford. What am I looking for?" "Everything he's hiding. And Carter, if someone's setting him up, I need to know that too." She ended the call and drove home to her Tribeca penthouse, poured bourbon, and stood at the windows overlooking the Hudson. Her phone buzzed within the hour. "Carter. Got something? Call me." "That was fast," she said when he answered. Daniel Crawford's social security number belonged to a kid who died in foster care 20 years ago. Someone recycled it, built a whole life around it 8 months ago. This isn't amateur work, Victoria. Professional help created this identity. Carter paused. "I'm running facial recognition now. But there's something else. I checked Richard Sutton like you mentioned. He's got offshore accounts in the Caymans totaling $47 million. Money flowing there gradually over 5 years through shell corporations." Victoria gripped the phone tighter. "That's not possible. Richard handles our finances. He shows you what he wants you to see. The embezzlement is sophisticated, buried in consulting fees, legal expenses, and he's been traveling to Geneva monthly, staying at a private estate that traces back to your ex-husband. James Sterling owns that property." The room tilted. James. Richard. Her company's secrets being stolen, the pieces assembled into a picture she didn't want to see but couldn't deny. Find out if James is still in Geneva and if Richard has any trips scheduled. Victoria pulled up security footage from the past 8 months, watching Daniel move through her building night after night. Then, at 3:42 a.m. exactly 4 months ago, she saw it. Daniel standing outside Richard's office, studying the door with an expression that lasted only 5 seconds. Not a janitor wondering if he should clean. Someone calculating, planning. Her phone rang again. Carter, voice urgent. "Facial recognition got a hit. Daniel Crawford is Daniel Lawrence, former Army Special Forces, specialized in covert operations. Honorably discharged 3 years ago, then dropped off the grid. His military records are partially redacted under national security protocols." He's a spy? Was. Or maybe still is. Those redactions suggest government contract work. CIA, NSA, maybe FBI. Carter paused. The daughter is real, though. Sophie Lawrence. Diagnosed with glioblastoma 18 months ago. Everything he told you checks out. Victoria felt tension loosen in her chest. The daughter was real. The desperation was real. Carter. Could Daniel be investigating the theft instead of committing it? Working undercover for someone? You mean like FBI? That's possible. If they suspected you might be involved with Richard's embezzlement, they'd need an inside man to prove otherwise. But if that's true, why would he access the server room and risk exposure? Maybe he didn't. Maybe someone else used his credentials to frame him. The theory crystallized. Richard had access to everything: employee records, security codes, cameras. If he'd discovered Daniel's identity, he could have easily set him up. Victoria checked the time, 6:43 a.m. Her email pinged. The sender was a friend, subject line, regarding your meeting with Mr. Crawford. She opened it against her better judgment. Ms. Sterling, Daniel Crawford is not your enemy. He's the only reason your company isn't destroyed. Richard Sutton has been planning this for years. Tonight was the final data transfer before he disappears. Daniel stopped it. The 7-minute gap was him disrupting the theft, not committing it. Sutton knows he's compromised, and he's moving his timeline. By 9 a.m. today, he'll be gone. Don't confront him yet. Just watch. If you want proof, check your apartment building surveillance from yesterday evening. Victoria pulled up her building security app, scrolling to yesterday evening. At 7:32 p.m., a figure in a baseball cap entered, using a resident key card, face angled away from cameras. For one moment as they pressed the elevator button, the cap shifted. Richard Sutton. Her CFO had been in her building, heading toward her floor. Victoria dialed building security. This is Ms. Sterling, Penthouse 3. Pull footage from yesterday, 7:30 to 9 p.m., specifically my floor. The guard responded. There was a maintenance request on your floor. Plumbing issue in the unit next to yours, completed at 8:15. Who authorized it? Building management. Standard protocol. Pull up footage of that worker. A pause. Ms. Sterling, there's a gap. About 40 minutes missing between 7:45 and 8:25. System logs show a firmware update during that window. Victoria's blood went cold. Who authorized the update? Doesn't say. Would have required admin credentials. She checked her apartment's smart home logs. Her door had been opened at 7:51 p.m., closed at 8:14. 23 minutes. Someone had been inside while she was at work, while cameras were offline. Victoria moved through her apartment now, and in her bedroom she saw it. The window overlooking the river was unlatched. A small scuff mark on the sill, the kind from a climbing harness. Someone had been preparing an escape route, or an entry point. They were planning to kill her. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Ms. Sterling. Daniel's voice, low and urgent. Don't go to the office today. Richard knows you're investigating. He's moving now. You have maybe 2 hours. The call cut off. Victoria stood in her bedroom, understanding with absolute clarity that this was about survival. She sent rapid texts to her lawyer, head of security, and Carter. If something happens to me, everything I've found goes public. Then she called Daniel's disconnected number and left a voicemail. Mr. Crawford, or Mr. Lawrence, if you're really trying to help me, meet me at Pier 17 in 1 hour. Come alone. She changed into jeans and a jacket, grabbed the Glock 9mm she'd hoped never to use, and headed out. Pier 17 was mostly empty at 7:30 a.m. Victoria arrived first, positioning herself with her back to the water. Daniel appeared minutes later, no longer in uniform but wearing tactical gear. He stopped 10 feet away, hands visible. "Thank you for coming," he said. "Give me one reason I shouldn't have you arrested." Victoria kept her hand near her waistband. "Because Richard Sutton is planning to kill you, probably today, and I'm the only person who can prove it." Daniel took a step closer. "My real name is Daniel Lawrence. I'm a federal agent investigating corporate espionage and money laundering. I've been undercover 8 months because Sutton's been stealing from you, working with your ex-husband to destroy Sterling Tech. The plan was to bankrupt you. Then James would buy the company for nothing. Why didn't you contact me directly? Initially, we weren't sure you weren't involved. We needed to be certain. But then, things escalated." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Sutton discovered Sophie was real, approached me 2 months ago, offered to pay for her treatment if I'd help him. Said you were corrupt and deserved it. And you said no. I said yes. Daniel met her eyes. I said yes because I needed him to trust me, to show me the full scope. My daughter is dying, Ms. Sterling. For 48 hours, I considered taking his offer. The honesty hit like a slap. What changed? You did. I watched you for 8 months, watched you fight for employees, quietly pay for your junior developer's mother's treatment when insurance denied coverage. You're not what Sutton claimed. And I realized if I let him destroy you to save Sophie, I'd be teaching my daughter that some lives matter more than others. Victoria felt her throat tighten. What now? Sutton's got a plane leaving Teterboro at 10 a.m., but he's also planning to eliminate the one person who can testify against him. Daniel pulled out his phone, showed her a text. Coordinates. Your daughter's school. He's threatening Lily. The world tilted. Victoria swayed, and Daniel steadied her. I already have agents en route. She's safe, I promise. But Sutton doesn't know that. He thinks he's got leverage. We can use it. How? You call him. Tell him you know everything. Tell him you'll let him leave. Won't press charges. But you want to meet first. He'll agree because he thinks he's won. When he shows up, we arrest him. Victoria nodded slowly. My office, Sterling Tech Tower, floor 42. He won't suspect anything there. Daniel hesitated. That's risky. I want him to see what he's losing. I want him to stand in the building he tried to destroy and realize I won. Victoria pulled out her phone. I'm calling him now. Wait. Daniel caught her wrist. The email this morning. The anonymous warning. That was me. I couldn't risk calling directly. Victoria looked at him. This man who'd lied about his identity but told the truth about everything that mattered. Your daughter. When this is over, I'm covering her medical bills. All of them. Daniel's eyes widened. You don't have to. Yes, I do. Because if Sutton had succeeded, my daughter would be without a mother. I understand what you were willing to sacrifice. Victoria squeezed his wrist briefly. Now, let me make this call. She dialed Richard's private number. He answered on the second ring. Victoria, everything all right? Richard, we need to talk. In person. My office, 9 o'clock. What's this about? I know about Geneva, the offshore accounts, James. She let that hang. But I'm not calling the police. I'm offering you a deal. 9 o'clock. Come alone. Silence stretched. Finally, Richard spoke, voice cold. And if I don't? Then every news outlet knows Sterling Tech's CFO has been embezzling for 5 years. You'll never work again. Or you can come to my office. We handle this quietly. And you disappear with dignity. She paused. Your choice. 9 o'clock. I'll be there. The call ended. Daniel was already coordinating with his team via radio. Victoria watched the sun climb over the East River and realized that in 90 minutes, everything would be decided. Let's go, she said, and together they headed towards Sterling Tech Tower. The building buzzed with employees starting their day, completely unaware their CEO was walking into a trap she'd set. Victoria and Daniel took separate elevators, her to the executive floor, him to coordinate with federal agents positioning throughout the building. The plan was simple. Richard would arrive expecting a private conversation and find himself surrounded by agents with enough evidence for 20 years in prison. Victoria stood at her office window, looking out over Manhattan. Her phone buzzed. Daniel. Team in position. Sutton just entered parking garage. ETA 3 minutes. The elevator chimed. Footsteps. Her door opened, and Richard Sutton walked in, closing it behind him. He looked exactly as always. Silver hair perfectly styled, expensive suit, professional polish. But his eyes were different. Harder. The mask had dropped. Victoria. He moved toward her desk. I appreciate you keeping this civilized. Did you ever care? In 15 years, was any of it real? Richard actually smiled. It was real in the beginning. I admired you, genuinely. But then you started believing your own myth, thinking you were invincible. I realized everything you'd built was just a house of cards waiting to fall. So you teamed up with James. James understood that success isn't about being smartest or working hardest. It's about being willing to do what others won't. Richard leaned forward. You could have been part of this, but you were too principled. Victoria's hand drifted toward her waistband. You're threatening my daughter. Lily has everything to do with this. She's your weakness. Richard pulled out his phone, showed her a photo of Lily outside her dorm, taken this morning. I have someone watching her. One phone call from me, and your daughter becomes collateral damage. You wouldn't. I will if you force my hand. Richard stood, adjusting his cufflinks. Here's what's happening. You're transferring $50 million into an account I specify. You're signing my retirement documents, and you're watching me walk out. In exchange, Lily stays safe. Before Victoria could respond, her door burst open. Daniel entered in tactical gear, FBI emblazoned across his chest. 3 more agents fanned out, weapons drawn. Richard turned, his face cycling through shock and anger. Richard Sutton, you're under arrest for wire fraud, embezzlement, corporate espionage, and conspiracy to commit murder. Daniel's voice was hard, official. Richard laughed, high and wrong. Murder? You think I'm stupid? He looked at Victoria with pity. I've been recording this conversation. Audio and video. He tapped his tie pin, revealing a tiny lens. You just admitted you knew about the embezzlement and didn't report it. That's misprision of felony. Your company will be investigated, your credibility destroyed. Sterling Tech will be worthless. James will buy it for nothing. You just helped us finish the job. The room went silent. Victoria felt the trap close, felt years of work crumbling because she'd let anger override caution. But Daniel spoke, voice calm, almost amused. That's a nice story, Sutton. Except we've been recording too. Every conversation in this building for 3 days, including where you explicitly threatened to harm a minor to extort money. He nodded to another agent, who held up a tablet showing Richard's text messages, calls to James, instructions to the man watching Lily. Richard's face went pale. That's illegal. Inadmissible. Perfectly legal with proper warrants as part of a federal investigation. Daniel moved closer. We've been building a case against you and James Sterling for 8 months. Every threat you made, every admission, it's documented. That recording you're proud of, it just confirms you were trying to extort her. Victoria watched Richard's composure crumble, the professional mask disintegrating into panic. He lunged toward her, but Daniel caught him, forcing him down while agents secured his hands. Richard was shouting threats and pleas, but Victoria had stopped listening. Her phone was already out, calling the agents protecting Lily. Agent Morrison, is my daughter safe? Yes, ma'am. Eyes on her right now. She's in class, completely secure. The individual surveilling her has been taken into custody. Victoria closed her eyes, letting relief wash over her. Lily was safe. Everything else was secondary. When she opened her eyes, Richard was being led out in zip ties, still ranting about lawyers, his world burning. Daniel approached her desk. Are you all right? No, but I will be. She looked up at him. Sophie's medical bills. I meant it. I'm covering all of it. And thank you for stopping this, for protecting my daughter. Daniel nodded. There's one more thing. James Sterling was arrested 30 minutes ago at his Geneva estate. Swiss authorities are holding him for extradition. It's over, Victoria. The words should have brought satisfaction, but mostly she just felt tired. What happens now? Now you run your company. You fix what Sutton damaged. You move forward. Daniel hesitated. And maybe spend time with your daughter. Make sure she knows she's more important than any business deal. Victoria smiled weakly. Already planned. First vacation in 6 years. Good. Daniel turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, you would have figured it out on your own. I just sped up the timeline. After he left, Victoria sat alone as morning sun climbed higher, as employees arrived unaware their CEO had just survived attempted murder and corporate coup. Her phone rang. Lily. Mom? Her daughter's voice sounded worried. There are FBI agents at my school. They said you're okay, but I needed to call. What's happening? Victoria closed her eyes. I'm fine, sweetheart. Everything's fine. There was a situation at work, but it's handled. I'm coming to get you. Today. We're taking a trip. Just you and me, anywhere you want. Really? But you never take time off. I know. That's going to change. Victoria looked at the city, at the empire she'd built and nearly lost. I love you, Lily. More than this company. More than anything. I'm sorry it took almost losing everything to remember that. I love you too, Mom. Can we go somewhere warm? Victoria laughed, and it felt genuine for the first time in years. Wherever you want, baby. Wherever you want. 6 months later, Victoria stood in a small Brooklyn nonprofit office watching kids learn basic coding on donated computers. TechBridge taught technology skills to underprivileged children, and she'd joined as chief operating officer 3 months ago, leaving Sterling Tech under her former CTO's leadership. The transition hadn't been easy. Board resistance, investor panic, media speculation. But Victoria hadn't explained beyond a brief press release about wanting more meaningful work. She was helping a 10-year-old debug Python when Daniel knocked, Sophie beside him. The little girl looked healthier, color in her cheeks, brightness in her eyes. Sophie wanted to thank you, Daniel said quietly. The treatment's working. Tumors shrinking. Without you, without your father, we'd both be in worse situations. He's the real hero. Victoria crouched to Sophie's level. I drew you a picture, Sophie said, holding out a crayon butterfly. Dad said you like butterflies. I love it. Thank you. Victoria led her into the classroom, and the students immediately pulled Sophie into their circle. Daniel and Victoria stood watching. You look different, Daniel observed. Happier. I am. Turns out running $1 billion company was killing me. Victoria glanced at him. What about you? Transitioned to part-time consulting. More time with Sophie. He paused. I heard Sutton got 23 years. James got 15. They earned it. Victoria felt no satisfaction, just quiet acknowledgement of justice served. Lily starts community college next semester. Social work instead of business. She learned from the best. Comfortable silence settled between them. TechBridge could use a cybersecurity curriculum, Daniel said. Teach these kids online protection. Create a pipeline for tech careers. Are you offering to help design it? I'm offering to teach it. 1 class a week. Pro bono. Victoria smiled genuinely. I'd like that. These kids need role models who understand success isn't just about money. It's about character. Then it's a deal. As afternoon wore on, Sophie watched the class with wide eyes, asking occasional questions. When students filed out, chattering about projects, Victoria felt contentment, not the rush of closing deals, but quiet satisfaction of making a difference in young lives. Daniel and Sophie left as sun set over Brooklyn. Victoria stayed late organizing curriculum, not because she was drowning in work, but because she wanted to. Her phone buzzed. Lily, dinner at 7, I'm making pasta. Victoria smiled and typed back. On my way home, love you. She gathered her things and headed for the subway. No more chauffeured cars or executive perks, just a woman heading home after work, like millions of others. She thought about the path that brought her here. The empire built and nearly destroyed. The betrayals that almost killed her. The choice to walk away from billions to find what actually mattered. She thought about Richard in prison, James defeated, and felt only pity for these men who'd measured success in dollars and power, never understanding they were chasing shadows. The apartment smelled like garlic when she opened the door. Lily was in the kitchen, apron covered in flour, hair in a messy ponytail. She looked up and smiled, and Victoria saw every reason she'd made the choices she had. "How was work?" Lily asked. "Good. Daniel and Sophie stopped by. She's doing much better." Over dinner, they talked about everything. Lily's classes, her boyfriend studying to be a therapist, the neighbor's cat. Normal, beautiful conversation that required no masks, just a mother and daughter sharing their lives. Later, lying in bed, Victoria thought about the anonymous email that had warned her, the 7 minutes that started everything, the moment Daniel looked into a camera and she'd seen calculation. All the pieces that had saved her life and woken her up to what she'd become. Her phone lit up with a text from Sarah at Sterling Tech. "Q4 earnings beat projections by 30%. You were right to trust me." Victoria typed back, "You were always ready. Proud of you." She set the phone aside and closed her eyes, listening to Lily moving around the apartment, distant traffic, the hum of a city that had finally let Victoria rest. Tomorrow she'd teach another class, watch more kids discover potential, maybe discuss curriculum with Daniel. Small things, quiet things, things that wouldn't make headlines but would matter in ways quarterly reports never could. Victoria Sterling had caught a janitor in the act, not of theft, but of saving her life. And he'd shown her how to save herself. Not from Richard's schemes or James's revenge, but from the prison she'd built around her own heart. She'd let those walls crumble, and what she found wasn't weakness, but freedom. Freedom to be human, imperfect, to measure success in love rather than dominance. As sleep claimed her, Victoria smiled, knowing she'd found something worth more than any empire. She'd found herself. Not the CEO persona or ruthless businesswoman, just Victoria. A woman who'd learned, almost too late, that the only thing worth catching was life itself, lived fully and with love. The cameras that once captured every corporate moment were gone. No footage of this, no record for posterity. Just a woman sleeping peacefully in a modest apartment, her daughter safe down the hall, her conscience clear, her heart finally at rest. And that was the real ending. Not the arrest or betrayal or confrontation, but this. A woman who'd had everything discovering she'd had nothing, and a woman who'd lost everything discovering she finally had enough.